Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Bani-Israel, chapter 17, and we will cover verses 9 to 15. The scroll of deeds and the accountability of the human self. These are the references, and this is our contact in case there is any query, question regarding this presentation or any of our past presentations. Recap verses 1 to 8 of Surah Bani-Israel, which we covered in our previous talk. In the establishment of the system of Deen, a stage may arise where it may be necessary for the Momineen to migrate to another location where more suitable conditions exist, which are conducive to this system. Here the Messenger of Allah is noted to be moving from his present abode, which was Mecca, to Medina, that is his future place for creating the system of Deen, in order to shape the system of Allah. He takes also necessary precautions. Then the Quran presents evidence from the earlier era where the messenger Musa also shaped the system of Deen with the help of Bani-Israel under the guidance of the Wahi of Allah, i.e. migrated to Sinai desert to educate and train Bani-Israel. Then another example is quoted of the messenger Nuh to provide assurance to the Momineen that if the Wahi of Allah is followed as per the guidance, then results are bound to materialize at some point in the future. And in his case, he left the place with the other Momineen after the flood. The Quran then refers to the destruction of Bani Israel when they disobeyed the guidance of Wahi, and this is to provide a warning to the followers of the Quran that no one is Allah's favorite. Whoever follows his laws earns a prosperous life as per the law of requital. Then we are informed that when the path of Wahi is followed, it brings glad tidings, and when we transgress this, we will turn our life into hell. And we should remember that this hell is not created by Allah. This is the outcomes of our deeds. That if we do evil deeds, obviously our life will turn into Jahannam. In this world, and there is nothing in the hereafter. An overview of today's presentation. The Quran contains guidance for Jamaat Momineen to establish Deen, and this system has all the hallmarks of stability, balance, prosperity, strength, and growth as a whole, as well as for an individual to bring out his best. Those who wish to live life at an animalistic level, and Quran calls it the life of Kufr, the Quran also explains to them the flaws in their psyche and warns them that their path in life will ultimately lead to their ruin and humiliation. Next is desiring quick outcomes for one's efforts is kept within man, and he needs to overcome this temptation and should always look at the long-term effects of making choices in life. And we will expand on this aspect, that how to overcome these and why should we overcome these proclivities and tendencies and temptations. In the alternation of day and night, there are signs for mankind, and this also creates time so that we can keep count of the years. That is, become conscious of the passing of time. This reminds us that our physical life in this world is finite. Every human being is accountable for his deeds as per the law of requital. The scroll of deeds of every human being keeps updating as life is lived, and this will present itself as an evidence at some point in the future. Very interesting topic, and we will go through some important points under this topic. Everyone carries his own burden, and this is how the system of Deen needs to be organized so that people happily carry out their duties in order to get the best out of their latent potentials. Let us go to the first verse of today's talk, 17:9. Glad tidings for those who follow the Quran. Inna hadhal Qur'ana yahdi lillati hiya aqwamu wa yubashshirul mu'mineen allazina ya'lamuna salihati anna lahum ajran kabira. Now this correct path can only be acquired through the guidance of the Quran. This is because in the journey of life, the Quran shows that path to the caravan of humanity, aside from which there can be no other path which is more balanced and straighter than this. And it provides glad tidings to those people who accept its truths and start to act on its defined program, that they will receive a supreme reward in return for their balanced deeds. Further elaboration of this verse: after going over some aspects of the conduct of Bani-Israel from the past and setting the scene for the establishment of the divine system in Medina, for which the last messenger resorted to migration, the Quran now informs us what the aim is behind this whole business of guidance for mankind. Let us analyze the verse in parts. First it says, Inna hazal Qurana. Surely this is the Quran. And if we remember, in Surah Al-Baqarah, it starts, Zalik al-Kitabu, Al-Kitab, the book which is complete in all respects. Once you understand it and come to terms with what is revealed in it, then you will come to this conclusion through your own rational thinking that it provides guidance, i.e., Yahdi lillati. And now the question is, guidance to what? Guides to Aqwamu. And I've put down its root here. It's worth looking at it in Lughatul Quran. Sirat-e-Mustaqim has the same root. That is, of Mustaqim has the same root. This encompasses every aspect of human life in terms of the means of sustenance, its distribution, and self-development. At a fundamental level, it means to create and retain balance. And all derivatives from this will have this aspect in each world. This will cover both the physical world as well as the cognitive domain of human life in this world. And as students of the Quran, we should always keep in mind what is in it for my psyche, for my intellect, for my reasoning ability, for my rational side. It is a superlative degree of being in a balanced and established state, and it includes both intellectually and physically. Further comments on this verse. Continuing from Aqwamu, next the verse announces Yubashiru, give glad tidings to those. Who are those? Al-Momineen al-lazina yamaluna salihati. We have gone through this aspect of Iman and Saleh deeds, and Quran keeps reiterating it in various verses, and we will find these kind of verses as we go through the Quran. So it is important that we keep reminding ourselves. And even in our day-to-day living, we should keep reminding it. And even when we consult with others or advise others or talk to others, we should point out to these two aspects. And appearance of this is required, as there is mention of severe destructions of Bani-Israel who went against the guidance of Wahi, and this is bound to create some unease in the human psyche. Here the Quran provides assurance to those who have opted for its guidance, telling them that its path is easy, simple, and clearly signposted based on evidence in both physical and psychic domains. Important for us, we have gone over these aspects again, and there is no harm in repeating it and reminding ourselves that the message of the Quran is very simple and straightforward. And that is how we should view it. And wherever we find difficulties arising within our own psyche, we should try to look at it again and again till that difficulty disappears. Acquire Iman after seeking guidance, and then check your Iman by doing Saleh deeds through coming together. And we will see that it is in a plural tense. This also means that if our Iman does not make us understand the importance of two aspects, firstly, why do Saleh deeds? And secondly, if these do not lead to being part of a team in order to unite our hearts, then these glad tidings will not make sense, will not lead to that conviction which is essential for the establishment of the system of Deen. This is an important aspect which we keep re-emphasizing, because if we think we are doing Saleh deeds which are bringing out our potentials, but desire and need is not created within our heart to go and join those who are already on this path, then those are not Saleh deeds. Those deeds, even ordinary people do a lot of charitable work. Over here, what Quran is saying is that glad tidings are tied to being together, coming together, because that is how the system of Deen then emerges from those people who come together and keep making effort, and then these things rise out of that, just like a seed grows out of the ground. What it means to be guided. In guidance, we need to know a few facts. Firstly, become aware that we are not on the correct path of life. For example, if we have lost our direction on the way to some destination, then we should be sure that we have definitely lost our way, and this is checked through some signposts. And that is a very important point, because if I think that I'm okay in my life, then I'm not going to look for guidance. Then even if the Quran, I go through the Quran, I will not be looking for guidance. I'll be just reading it academically as just a book, as we read some book of fiction. But if I'm looking for guidance, then the verses of the Quran will start making sense to me. Secondly, we now need to use some aid. For example, ask someone who can guide us. This can be a map, satellite navigation system, Google, etc. Thirdly, we need to have full confidence and trust in this person who is guiding us, or complete trust in the map, for example, Google, etc. Any doubts and suspicions will create uncertainty in our mind whether this will take us to our destination or not. Reaching the destination will become evidence of the correct guidance. However, this is related to the physical aspect of our living. I gave this example because it is important that we can get something out of from our day-to-day living. That whenever, even when we are following a satellite navigation system and it at times it does misguide us, where it has, for example, not been updated, or there is some traffic problem on the way, then uncertainty sets into our mind and we feel a bit vulnerable that whether we will be able to reach our destination or not. But in the case of the Quran, if we have firmly acquired that conviction, which the Quran guides us all along, then we will never have any doubts at some point in time in the future. And removing these doubts means that we have to be together so that we can guide each other as well. In the case of the Quran, as we know, it is related to our invisible psyche and its ability to guide us in making choices and decision making on every crossroad of our journey. However, if followed, then it ultimately leads to changes in the outer physical domain of life as well. The Quran points to these aspects of its guidance and invites us to start treading on this path. And you will find enough signs on the path which will confirm to you that the path being followed is indeed Sirat al-Mustaqim. Now let us go to the next verse, 17:10, criterion for differentiation between Iman and Kufr. وَأَنَّ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ أَعْتَدْنَا لَهُمْ عَذَابًا أَلِيمًا. A short verse, but a lot is there to discuss and to share. And for those people who do not have conviction in the life of the future and consider this worldly life alone to be the aim as a consequence of their wrong path, there is the chastisement of a painful destruction based on the outcomes of their evil deeds. And this points to the previous verse that if somebody is not looking for guidance and never gets the guidance of the Quran, essentially they live a life, broadly speaking, under this definition of kufr. Some further elaborations on this verse. After announcing glad tidings to Momineen, here the Quran has noted the issues facing those who live a life of kufr, i.e., think that this life ends with physical death and that as long as they can accrue the benefits of this life, they have lived a successful life. Here the Quran has mentioned the life of the hereafter, which is an important part of Iman, because not to consider it as a fact means that one is either not aware of the existence of a self or does not consider the possibility of any life after the brain is dead. This point needs further analysis as it affects our collective life in the world. Those who think this life of theirs will end with physical death and that which their own death they will get away with their crimes are bound to cause problems in this life. And this is very important, that if we do not hold ourselves accountable and think there is no life beyond death, then there is nothing in this life which can curtail us, regulate us, discipline us. And particularly if we also have tremendous power in our hand. This psyche leads to the grabbing of power by these people, since they use every legitimate and illegal means to acquire power. And I have inverted commas these legitimate and illegal, which is in reference to the man-made system. They break their own constitutions and man-made laws when it suits them and are willing to go to any extent to satisfy their base desires. Just look at the extent of criminality being witnessed, for example, in Gaza, and we can look at it in all other wars and conflicts in the world from the past. Expanding it further, this verse 17:10, hence when the Quran makes short statements in its verses, we need to expand these as much as possible by relating these to the man-made world of our era. Here it notes, La yuminuna bil akhirate, those who form the decision not to make any effort to seek a higher purpose in life. They are quite happy with the benefits they are accruing from the man-made system, and they don't think that the life will go beyond that. Hence, they never make any effort to look at any alternative because they are happy with their one choice. And by being beneficiaries of the man-made systems, feel secure within these laws favoring the top echelon of the society. And mostly you will see these are those people who have some kind of power at some level within a society. They wish to fulfill their unbridled desires, whatever the consequences may be on wider humanity. Death and accountability rarely cross their minds. They might say, sometimes people do say, for example, in the religious domain, oh, we are going to die one day, or we are accountable, but they really don't mean it. They don't take it seriously because they do not use the Quran as guidance, and they have never accepted Iman in the Quran. For guidance, the Quran states that do not think that this will not affect you and wider humanity among whom you live. They will create Jahannam in the world due to their absence of Iman. And when we talk of Jahannam as students of the Quran, we should always keep in mind that this is not created by Allah. This is created by going against His laws and by those human beings who do not take into account those laws and follow their own unbridled desires. And things will only go bad to worse as hellfire will keep increasing in its intensity with the passage of time. And this also we should keep in mind that if we give up this path, then things will not go in our favor. At least when we are following this path, there is a higher aim of life in front of us. We have convinced ourselves that even if this system does not get established during our lifetime in this world, we are going to be part of this system in the hereafter. And we have acquired that self which meets the criterion of the system of Deen, whether in this life or in the life of the hereafter. Here the effects noted are called azaban alima. This covers both physical as well as psychological aspects, and under alima, this kind of a punishment, when Quran refers to it, includes fear, huzn, and all the aspects of anxiety and depression which are connected with the human psyche. The law of requital ensures that evil deeds lead to creating hell for everyone in the world. We can see both aspects being affected in the world of 2024. Now let us go to the next verse, 17:11, pointing to the human psyche which opts for immediate benefits in life. وَيَدُ الْإِنسَانُ بِالشَّرِّ دُعَاهُ بِالْخَيْرِ وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَجُولًا. The consequence of rejecting the life of the future and viewing the physical life of this world as being everything is that the aim of man becomes relegated to obtaining immediate benefits only. He attempts to gather these as quickly as possible. Due to greed and temptation, such thick veils cover his eyes that he cannot even decide between his real benefit and loss. He cannot differentiate between khair, which is good, and shar, which is evil. He invites harmful things in the same way as he invites good things. And this verse emanates, and if we link it to the previous verse where the hereafter is mentioned, that those who do not have conviction in the hereafter, then this is the kind of mentality they will have, but there is more to it. Further reflections on this verse 17:11. Moving forward from the psyche of Kufr, the verse here points to a major flaw in human thinking by opting for immediate benefits of physical life. The experiments done on testing delayed gratification prove that those children who follow this practice of delayed gratification, they do better overall in life than those who chase immediate benefits of life. This verse has put forward the issue of shar and khair. Man supplicates for those things which are not good for his self, which are called shar, and looks at their immediate benefits, ignoring the long-term consequences. This is the default human state, and we need to first become aware of this. Because if we are not aware of this, then how are we going to study it and then analyze it and then do something about it? And then be apprised with the short and long-term effects of such an approach, and then understand all the temptations and allurements existing in the society in which we live. It's quite a challenging task, because unless we know what are the problems which are facing ourselves and the society around us, it is not possible to deal with those problems, because we have to diagnose it first. Since all decision making is carried out at the self's level, hence we need to know what is good for the self and what is bad for its development. Now, over here, what I've done is, it was quite a difficult verse to deal with. And I thought, luckily I was going through this human self and its destiny, that is Kitabul Taqdeer. And I came across few excerpts noted down by Allama Parvez, and I thought we should share it through these slides. In physical life or at animalistic level, the criterion for khair and shar, or benefit and loss, is very clear and simple and straightforward. That thing or task from which we obtain a material benefit, it is khair. That from which there is a material loss, it is shar. In this matter, it is also worth bearing another thing in mind, that according to this criterion, nothing can be declared as being a cause for khair or a cause for shar on a permanent basis. The very same thing which is beneficial at one point in time, according to circumstances pertaining at that time, at another time with a change in circumstances can be harmful. This is the state under which people live their life under relative values. For example, at some point, speaking truth can benefit us in the man-made system, and at another time, telling a lie can benefit under the man-made system. And we see it being practiced every day. But when life is viewed at the human level, i.e., when it is acknowledged that human life does not only consist of the physical body alone, there is an entity other than the body, which is called the human self, then another criterion of good and evil appears before us, and that is for benefit and loss, and that is that those matters through which the human self becomes developed, from which integration is produced within it, those are khair, and those from which its development halts and disintegration occurs within it, those are shar. Continuing on this aspect from the same book, since the human self is non-physical and at this point in time invisible, hence the scales for measurement of its khair and shar are also not visible. For example, every individual can know and recognize what harm transpires from ingesting poison. But what harm occurs to the human self from telling a lie can neither be seen nor measured. And that is very important, that if as students of the Quran, we have picked up this aspect, that if I tell a lie and what effect it will have on myself, then we will see that how then we are in a position to explain it to others as well. And we will see that our self will keep becoming strengthened, that we gave up the immediate benefits of life and never went for harming ourselves. Contrary to this, there can be a material benefit from telling a lie. The reality is that man only tells a lie at that time when he has an expectation of gaining some benefit. Without the expectation of some benefit, only an insane person will tell a lie. It is clear that as far as the human self is concerned, neither its criterion for harm or benefit, nor its scales for measurement are physical. And that is a problem, because in the physical world, if I put my finger in fire, it will burn and I will know the effect. But if I do harm to myself by doing something which is against the Quranic value system, then of course I won't see the harm, but it will harm ourselves. And as the students of the Quran, we can recognize it. And that is why we will not go for that. Its criterion is the permanent values which are called morals in common terminology. It should be made clear that morals relate to human life. There can simply be no concept of morals among animals. In a society in which the human self is not acknowledged, there is no basis for morals. This is called the materialistic concept of life, and that system of living is called secularism. In this, there are only the laws of society, and those are called, for example, social laws or laws of justice, without which the communal life of man cannot remain in place. Few more aspects of this verse. We are asked to establish the system which takes a long-term view of human life and includes the permanent values, the life of the hereafter, and the concept of Allah based on His attributes. Without these, we will always try to go after the immediate benefits of physical life and will never even think about the issue of self-development. We simply cannot. Another point which emanates from this is the issue of teaching and training under the system of Deen, where people will be educated on its various aspects and their applications in the outer world. For example, they will be informed about every step taken by the government which is in place, about what impact this will have on their physical and psychic life. I put down this comment so that we can stretch our imagination into the future. And even we can practice it in our own families with our children on a smaller scale. But important is that human beings must be explained the effects of everything we do, all kinds of thoughts arising in our mind under the system, so that people can recognize those thoughts and then make a choice that which thought is to be taken forward in making a decision and which thought should be discarded. This will be signposted so that they can check themselves whether their selves are developing or not. As far as the physical side is concerned, it is easy to check its effects. This aspect is important and it will be covered in a later verse about the scroll of deeds. This means that while as students of the Quran we are striving on this journey of life, we need to continue to look for evidence in our decision making. For example, any choice which the I is making, I put it down under inverted commas and should be taken as ourself, what impact this will have in this life and the life of the hereafter. On this path, there is no shortcut, and we must avoid any distractions of going for quick results, stay firmly on the path defined by the Quran. And this is very much applicable to our efforts on this forum, that we should never ever become distracted and say that before acquiring full conviction and full understanding of what Deen is and how the self develops, we should never ever think of or even have a thought that we are not doing enough. We are doing maximum which the Quran is asking us for this stage of our learning. Next verse 17-12, drawing our attention to the physical world. وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارَ آيَتَيْنِ فَمَحَوْنَا آيَاتِ اللَّيْلِ وَجَعَلْنَا آيَاتَ النَّهَارِ مُبْصِرَةً لِتَبْتَغُوا فَضْلًا مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ وَلِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ الْأَسْنِينَ وَالْحِسَابَ وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَصَّلْنَاهُ تَفْصِيلًا. This matter is made clear by the wahi of Allah, what khair is and what shar is, what their mutual connection is, and how the forces of khair, constructive and beneficial, overpower the destructive forces of shar in their tussle. For example, just look at the day and night. Outwardly, these appear to be the opposite of each other, but in reality, they are two aspects of the same system. When the darkness of night, due to the rotation of the earth, disappears, then the day arrives with its full brightness, so that you can pursue the means of sustenance according to the law of your Rabb. Furthermore, through the alternation of day and night, you can count the years, and which creates time, and be able to do all sorts of calculations from this. In this way, we have kept everything in the universe separate from each other, but despite this being constituents of a gigantic machine, these are also mutually dependent on each other. Some reflections on this verse. By virtue of possessing a thinking mind and an emotive heart, we need to be convinced about the issues related to our psyche and the permanent values. The Quran has referred to various physical laws and signs in the outer world in various verses in order to invite us to think and reflect that the world is created for a higher purpose, for man to become creative in order to create a world free from fear and huzn. And we have gone through a number of verses on physical environment and physical world. We need not live a life of misery with physical death staring us in the face all the time. We need to create a new life within each one of us by becoming aware of the existence of the permanent values. Here in this verse, we are invited to reflect on the alternation of day and night, which we experience every day, which creates time and points to our finite physical existence on the planet. Then it is pointed out that we use the day for earning our living by making use of the land provided free to us, and it is for the good of the whole of mankind. The verse concludes with a meaningful statement, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَصَّلْنَهُ تَفْصِيلًا. All aspects which we require for guidance are placed within our reach in this book. Few more reflections on this verse. Metaphorically, this verse also gives us hope that no matter how bad things become in the human world, the sun will rise at the end of the night, meaning if Haqq continues its efforts, then Batil is bound to retreat and will be neutralized at some point in time through human efforts. And if we do not keep pursuing Haqq, then night will also fall. So this is the way we can look at it metaphorically. In this world, Batil created by non-Quranic forces will never disappear completely, and the Jamaat Momineen needs to keep reminding themselves 24/7 about this fact of life on this planet. By stating لِتَبْتَغُوا فَضْلًا مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ, the Quran has pointed to both aspects of human existence, i.e. physical as well as the self. Because the word Rabb has appeared over here, which points to Rububiyat. And when we talk of Rububiyat in the word, in the human word, then we have to take into account both physical as well as the aspect of ourself. And this will become clearer in the next few lines. Keeping both these aspects in mind is important, as we can easily forget that our life is fine if we meet the physical needs of everyone in the land. Just to remind us from Surah Jummah, وَابْتَغُوا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. Disperse in the land to look for the fadl of Allah and keep in mind the laws of Allah. This is the path of success and eminence in this life. And we can see over here it says وَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ, and Quran is a zikr, which means we should keep in mind all the permanent values all the time. There is a lot of learning involved in coming to the Quran, because it has to be taken into account every aspect of our life. Whatever we do during the day, we should keep it in mind that what is applicable here. Initially, of course, it might create a bit of stress, but gradually we get used to it and through practice. Let us go to the next verse, 17:13. Explore the process and procedure of your own accountability. وَكُلَّ إِنسَانٍ أَلْزَمْنَهُ طَائِرَهُ فِي عُنُقِهِ وَنُخْرِجُ لَهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ كِتَابًا يَلْقَهُ مَنْشُورًا. The tussle between khair and shar remains busily functioning in human life itself, and from this the scroll of deeds of every individual after becoming established remains hanging around his neck. He has no control over the alteration of its outcomes. And we have seen it that once we have done the deed, then the effects of that deed are outside our control. What kind of a deed we have done, the effects will be according to that particular deed. Until the time does not arrive for the manifestation of these outcomes, it is as if that scroll of deeds remains rolled up. When the time arrives for the manifestation of outcomes, then that same rolled up scroll appears in front in the shape of an open book. Further elaborations of this verse. This verse throws light on the functioning of the human psyche in relation to its accountability and deserves to be analyzed in some detail. Everything we do in life is preceded by some thought, some idea, desire, emotion, feeling. And we know it, and we have gone over it many times before as well. But it is good to keep reminding ourselves, and of course, in the training of our children, this aspect is very important. Arising in our mind and heart, and which is a cognitive domain. By possessing a positive outlook, we act positively in life and face the challenges squarely and with courage. While a negative outlook slows us down and at times, in a worst case scenario, leads to even committing suicide. I put down inverted commas because suicide is not only in terms of physical extermination or death, but suicide also means, like what Quran has said in the previous in that verse where we discussed Kufr in relation to the life of the hereafter, that if we are not doing anything for our self-development, then essentially our life will come to an end at the time of our death, which is a suicide. Here, the Quran is not making us become fearful or scaring us into forced submission to the values and laws of the Quran. Not at all. This is an important point because Quran wants us to live a fearless life, but to be aware of the consequences of whatever we do. And in order to be aware of the consequences of whatever we do, we have to know the full functioning of the law of requital and the law of respite, and how does it impact on our psyche. Coming to grips with our own accountability opens up immense opportunities and potentials which are lying in a latent form within us and which can only be brought out by realization of the existence of the laws of requital and respite. For example, if someone wishes to become a doctor, he knows all about the exams and training he has to undergo before becoming a specialist and has to toil for many years. He does not fear this nor complains about it, as he looks forward to all the benefits associated with this achievement and so works with dedication through it. This is true in the case of all pursuits of life under man-made systems. This is a very tangible example, and we can see it happening in the world around us. And we also have gone through, in case we have acquired some degree in education, we have also gone through this procedure that we have to meet the prerequisites of that, and we never get bored because there is a success, inverted commas, lying ahead of it. So why should this principle change in the case of the Quran when we are trying to follow this system? Pursuing benefits of this life through self-development. Parallel with this, the Quran does not forbid us from doing this even under the man-made systems and invites us to a higher purpose of life by drawing our attention of the fact that each one of us possesses a self which can be developed concurrently with our worldly pursuits by becoming aware of, firstly, of its presence within each one of us. Secondly, the law of requital exists, and we should become aware of our own accountability so that we can use it for enhancing eminence through self-development. In fact, once we follow the Quran and follow the path of self-development, whatever we do, even within the man-made system, our performance, our outlook, our conduct is far higher and far superior to those who are not seeking self-development. And it's a fact, because we put in our best, and everything which we do, we hold ourselves accountable. And holding ourselves accountable, irrespective of what is happening around us, is the highest form of acquiring eminence and loftiness. Quoting the example of becoming a doctor, we hold ourselves accountable and follow the strict course of practicing medicine. Whether somebody is watching us or not, we never look for shortcuts. We deal with other human beings as equal human beings, giving them full respect and dignity as humans. If we can do that, why not follow the law of requital of Allah, which in fact will be superior to the man-made laws? Thirdly, becoming accountable to our own self through a higher self-awareness and by doing salih deeds. And this is what life is all about. We become highly self-conscious. We become highly aware of what is going on within ourselves and what is going on in the outer world. And this is giving new life to our I, to ourself. We start to manifest divine attributes, the effects of which we observe through our conduct in our daily lives. Continuing on this, on the same verse, fourthly, physical death as a deadline disappears. And this is very important. Fourthly, physical death as a deadline disappears. And we live life free from the fear of unseen accountability, which provides us with assurance that the path being followed is lit by the light of the Quranic values. We join those who are on this path and we continuously associate with them. Here in this word, the Quran refers to those who are not aware of their accountability and thus their scroll of deeds. Hence, implicit in this is the message of the followers of the Quran that your scroll of deeds will not need to be opened, as you will already know it in detail and clearly visible to you. I went through this aspect very carefully and looked at it again and again, because this scroll of deeds, the way the verse says is that this scroll of deeds will be exposed to them and they will, of course, be taken aback. In some other verses, it is said that they will say that this scroll of deeds does not miss out anything. But in the case of those who have followed this path, who are students of the Quran and who have acquired Iman and doing salih deeds, This scroll of deeds is not a surprise for them because they already know it. And Quran has pointed to this aspect in some other verses as well, and we will go through them at some other point in time. Can there be a higher reward in this life than this, i.e., with a developed self? The Quran says, وَبِالْآخِرَاتِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. Firm assurance of the hereafter will be acquired if you follow this path. This is intrinsically linked to Iman plus Saleh deeds, just like paracetamol is linked to the removal of a headache. Follow this path, and this aspect will prove as an evidence to ourselves that this is true. A student of Deen has already extricated himself from all kinds of cognitive darknesses created by man-made systems and has placed himself in the light of the Quran, where he can see Haqq clearly. And by being in the company of those who also have Iman, keeps moving forward on Sirat-e-Mustaqim. Few more comments on the scroll of deeds. The Quran does not leave things obscure for Momineen, as Allah wishes us to know our fate right here in this life so that we tread on His defined Sirat-e-Mustaqim with full conviction of our heart and mind. Human beings simply cannot put in their best if they are not fully assured of their success in life. If somebody is becoming a doctor and he's not sure whether he will become one or not, he's not going to put in his best because that doubt will all the time lurk underneath in his subconscious. This is the way the human psyche functions. The scroll which Momineen create is continuously verified by using the Quranic criteria, and I have taken part of the verse here. It is worth going through this verse in full. A day arrives in their life when they can see the light of guidance serving as a beacon on their path ahead. They are enabled to see things clearly. A developed self becomes an evidence of its being guided on this path, and this takes place right here in this word. When the Quran declares that Inna Ibrahima kana ummatan qanitan lillahi hanifa, and we went through it previously in one of our presentations, the messenger Ibrahim was an ummah in himself. The messenger Ibrahim knew what he had become. The evidence lay in his obedience to the laws of Wahi. He strove together with his companions on this path through employing all his possessions and wealth, whatever he possessed at that point in time. Next verse 17-14, procedure of accountability described. Ikra katabaka kafa bi nafsika al-yawma alayka hasiba. And it is said to man, look, read your own scroll of deeds. There is no need to call auditor from outside for holding you to account. Your own self is enough to hold you accountable against your own self. So Kitabaka, that you were writing your own autobiography, and now that autobiography is complete, have a look. And we can look into this autobiography at any point in time if we use the Quranic light. Some reflections on the human psyche. We need to understand this verse and its various aspects psychologically in order to explain the functioning of the law of requital to others. From the verse, it appears as if this is going to happen in the life of the hereafter. The verse is very much applicable in this life, where we need to come to terms with our own psyche and the way in which our thought process functions and reveals itself on us. Here the Quran informs us about our I and what possessions it acquires as it goes through the journey of life. Whatever this I does in its pursuit of its ambitions, the effects of this pursuit keep imprinting on his self-concept. If I holds itself accountable for what it does, then it knows the effects of its deeds. However, if it ignores its accountability or is not fully aware of it, even then these effects are imprinted on his self. But since he is not cognizant of these, hence these go into his unconscious mind. Very important, we should keep in mind unconscious mind because I will explain it slightly later. We experience some flashbacks of these effects in our life, for example, as guilt, which we ignore and continue in pursuit of our unbridled desires. Continuing expanding it further, what do we take forward with us beyond our physical death? Our I goes forward, and whatever we used to claim as mine, for example, my body, my car, my progeny, my job, my house, all are left behind. And we can see the evidence of it Go to the burial site of anyone in a cemetery, you will see that only dead body is going forward, which is dead, and I is not there anymore. So everything is left behind. Whatever this I has become due to its indivisibility and unity, it retains it and enters the life of the hereafter. We can see that what can Allah do about the state of this I, as He does not interfere in human affairs directly and strictly follows His own laws. And this is very important to understand, that how do we understand our self-development process, and how do we look at what we are doing as we are living our life. And which obviously means that whatever choices we are making, let's say from hereafter onwards, we should be fully cognizant of that and fully aware of that. This is what is expected from the human I too, i.e. to follow Allah's laws as He also follows His own laws. We should remember that Allah follows His own laws, and we know He follows His laws because there is evidence everywhere. This conviction strengthens human I. And if we follow His laws, then we will also keep strengthening our I. And this I, as a result of this strengthening, will become assured of its own future life. Here the Quran is asking us to acquire this new self by following the permanent values, so that our I can keep taking account of his own self on a 24/7 basis, fully aware of its inner world, as well as aware of the world in which it resides physically and is contributing to it. Staying together and uniting hearts is an evidence in itself that this I of ours is willing to hold itself accountable on this path. It becomes its necessity, just like breathing is our need to stay alive. And this is the purpose of creating human beings with choice and intent, so that they can create their own new life within them. And that new life, then they own it. Nobody can take it away from them. And if they develop it to that extent within the permanent values, then their paradise is built within that developed state which they have acquired, and nobody can take that paradise away. And this is something which we need to concentrate more or less on a regular basis. Now over here I've drawn a schematic just to illustrate this point a bit further, illustrating the link between conscious and unconscious or subconscious mind. Conscious mind, where we practice deliberate decision making, live our life consciously. Here two kinds of selves operate: those driven by non-Quranic relative values. Majority follows this pattern, and we can't miss them, because if they haven't come to the Quran, then obviously they do not possess that Quranic self. And those who have even come to the Quran but are just cursorily going through it, do not understand the system of Deen, do not know about the permanent values, do not have any feeling or any understanding of their own accountability, you can put them together in the non-Quranic selves. The others are those who follow the permanent values through choice, i.e. under the Quranic guidance. Farmer's life is predicated on this assumption that human life ends with physical death, hence not fully conscious of the accountability of the self, i.e. not fully aware of the laws of requital and respite. One of the points which has come to my mind is, for all of us as students of the Quran, that we should not be fearful of saying it clearly from the Quran, that this is what the Quran is saying, that either you are with the Allah of the Quran as his companion and working for the system of Deen, or you are not. And we should clearly tell them, and not to be scared of it, because this indicates that our self has strengthened to that level of conviction where it is willing to tell the way it is. It is very black and white. As we know, that Quran is very black and white. There are no gray shades in the Quran. It tells about the human existence and reality as it is. And as we live our life from here to here, we keep sending everything which is going to our unconscious or subconscious. The domain of unconscious or subconscious mind, whatever we think and do, keeps leaving its imprint on this part of the human self. We regularly experience flashbacks from our past about some important events and incidents in our life. And all of us experience it. Some regrets, some disappointments, some good points, some bad points, some happy memories, some sad memories. All this keeps coming back to us in flashes and even our dreams. This keeps becoming the scroll of our deeds, and that is the scroll of our deeds from which those things are flashing back and reminding us that your scroll is getting ready as you are living this life. And if we make an effort, we can recollect a lot. We have seen people writing their autobiographies in a lot of detail. And we can, with some effort, differentiate between the two states of our existence, i.e., the pre-Quranic phase of our life and the post-Quranic phase of our life. We may not need to look at our scroll of deeds, which belongs to our Quranic phase, because if we are extremely conscious of what we are doing after getting the guidance of the Quran, this scroll will give us tremendous pleasure and all those glad tidings to which the Quran is pointing to in the previous verse, in the earlier verse. Physical death is the end of our test in this life. It decides our status, whether we have acquired that self which has the ability to rise higher and it meets the requirements of the system of Deen in the next life. And it is not ambiguous or otherworldly. Right here in this life, we will know it and we will find it out. And the whole purpose of creating this forum and coming together and uniting our hearts is to acquire that ability, because without acquiring that ability, we are of not much use to the system of Deen. Or we have that self which is meant to stagnate eternally. And life beyond physical death. Now let us go to the last verse of today's presentation, 17:15. We need to view our life at the level of the accountability of the human self. Man ihtada fa innama yahtadi li nafsihi wa man dalla fa innama yadillu alayha wa la taziru waziratum wizra ukhra wa ma kunna muwazzibina hatta nab'asa rasulan. In fact, the verses which we have gone through today, we should keep in mind the references of it, and for the guidance of others, as in we want to share Quranic guidance with others, these are very good references to point their attention to these verses. What are these scrolls of deeds? These are living evidence of this reality, that whichever individual treads on the straight path, the benefits of this are for his own self. And the one who adopts the wrong path has to bear its losses himself. Here, no bearer of burdens bears the burden of another. That is, i.e., everyone carries his own weight. For this, it is essential that the right and wrong paths are clearly placed in front of man. This is the very purpose of the process of divine guidance. And then Quran states another permanent value. This is the reason why we have never done this, that we do not send our messenger to a nation who could inform them by differentiating between right and wrong, that everyone is warned in this life and bring destruction on them. After the cessation of the process of nubuwwat, this aim will now become accomplished through the Quran. So no nation can complain that they were not warned about their destruction, which is bound to come at some point if they're following the non-Quranic path of life. Further reflections on human choice and intent. Continuing with the theme of the accountability of the human self, and after mentioning the scroll of deeds holding the record of every deed of man, here in this verse, the trait of human choice and intent is made clear. If anyone takes the right path, then it is for his own good, i.e., he is not extending any favor to anyone. It is the way human self-development takes place. And this is important, that we should look at it as a procedure rather than mechanically, because it's not mechanical. This is the change within our own self, that if I'm happy with the way my life is, then I don't need guidance. But if I'm not happy, and the world in which I'm living, which is created by man-made systems, and I'm dissatisfied with that, then I should be looking for an alternative. And that is the first thought which should come to our mind, and then we should direct our efforts on that side so that we can find the guidance. Then it mentions the fact that وَمَنْ دَلَّ فَإِنَّمَا يَدِلُّ عَلَيْهَا. If someone wishes to go astray, this going on the wrong path will lead to his own loss. And which also means that if he or she is happy on the path they are following in this world, and they are not looking for guidance, they don't find anything wrong with it, which essentially means they want to stay astray. They are quite happy with the benefits of this life, and they are essentially thinking and assuming that the life will end with death. Man is free to make his choices and then to live by the consequences of these choices. This world is created in such a way that man can also see the outcome of some of his choices as he lives his finite physical life. The next is such a permanent value which needs to be explained in detail to children at a very early stage in their life, i.e., وَلَا تَعْزِرُوا وَازِرَاتٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. No bearer of burdens can carry the burden of anyone else. Firstly, being possessors of choice and intent, each human being has certain responsibilities, and these need to be undertaken and carried out in order to be successful in this life. This is true even under man-made systems. Expanding this verse a bit more, we are provided with a physical body which can perform a number of functions under the direction of our eye. And if this body does not carry out its physical task, then it fails to do what it is meant to do. This failure to do this will lead to many issues. For example, if we are not using our body optimally for which it is meant, then essentially we will become lazy. There will be an absence of agility. We will have a poor health because we are not exercising properly, which is a requirement for our physical body. Diseases in the long run will set in. For example, if people are taking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, taking bad processed foods, taking drugs, not sleeping well, not exercising. So all these things will lead to these diseases. Depression will set in because if there is an absence of higher aim in life, then depression is bound to arrive, and there are many contributing factors to that. Physical disabilities can occur, uneventful life, because there is no higher aim in life. If one thinks that life will end with death, or one lives life as if it will end with death, then essentially with every passing day, life is becoming meaningless. Since our body follows the physical laws, hence we need to know these laws and take care of our body in order to live a longer and healthier life. And over here, when we say healthier life, is a physical life. Why live longer? So that if we have come to the Quran, we can help shape this world. This is where the issue of self-development comes within our sight, and we make the choice of taking over those responsibilities which Allah wishes us to carry out in the world to accomplish His program, so that humanity can come out of its darknesses. We can see plenty of these darknesses in today's world in 2024. I have put an inverted commas on that because this is something which we should strive, make an effort to find out ourselves as well. Connected with this is the permanent value, وَأَنْ لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانَ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى, that man can have nothing but what he strives for. And this is true both in the physical as well as in the world of our human psyche. The reward can never be for the capital, and it should be for the work one puts in. This combined with وَلَا تَعْزِرُ وَازِرَاتٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى forms the basis of the Quranic system of sustenance. And for this, we can go through the book, The Quranic System of Sustenance by Allama Pervez. Finally, on this verse to conclude, this is the basis of the system of Deen and should not be viewed from the perspective of the man-made system. If we do that, then it will appear to be impossible, and we think we cannot achieve this. But that is not an issue. Issue over here is, have we understood the finer aspects, and we are utilizing it for our self-development and keeping these in mind all the time. Under the man-made system, people in a position of power wish to do the minimum and extract the maximum, i.e. by exploiting the hard work of others. If we keep in mind the law of requital and its functioning and witness its working in our individual lives and in the world, then we can see through the problems existing in the world. Next is the Quran asks us to willingly use our known and not yet known potentials in order to enhance our own value as a human being and then remain united in the cause of Allah. So as we are manifesting our potentials, as we are living our life in the light of what we are sharing on this platform, we should keep in light in front of us that how better we are becoming with each passing week, month, year. We need to keep seeking guidance from relevant verses of the Quran and remain motivated and ignore any thoughts of frustration and hopelessness. This is part of the self-development process. The verse is concluded by stating another permanent value of serving a warning to every people about the consequences of their deeds. Self-destruction never visits without prior warnings. We can see this values functioning in our world of today. And thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.